Welcome to Kevin Deal Photography, where I take you on my journey through photography. On today's episode, we're going to be doing an in-depth review of Luminar NEO. Welcome to today's episode. If you're not familiar with Kevin Deal Photography, we do gear reviews, tips, techniques, and tutorials, and sometimes we dive into film. If any of that sounds appealing to you, click the subscribe button below. So there is an abundance of photo editors on the market right now. I myself have done Lightroom in the past. I'm doing Capture One right now. I do Photoshop right now. So when I was approached by Luminar NEO, I was kind of like, well, I already have a lot of editing programs, and there's a lot of editing programs out there. However, the AI modules did look like they did a lot of really cool tasks for me, and time is money. And so I took them up on their offer, and I have a copy that I am testing out for today's episode in exchange for a review. But Luminar has not seen this episode. They are seeing it for the first time right now, just like you are. And so my opinions on this are going to be my own, and my review is going to be completely independent. I'm going to tell you what I like about the program and what I think could be improved upon about the program. Because if I'm not completely honest with you, what good is this channel anyway? This is a pretty long episode, so we're going to dive right into what these modules have to offer, how powerful they can help me along with my edits. And I'm going to put the chapters below. So maybe if you're a landscape photographer and you don't care about the portrait modules, you can just skip to that part. Or maybe you're a portrait photographer and you don't want to sit through the landscape modules. Now we're going to start off with some street photography, which is one genre I shoot. And then we're going to move into landscape and vacation photos. And then we're going to end off with my bread and butter, which is portraiture. But let's go ahead and dive into today's episode right now. So first and foremost, the way I intend to use this is I'm going to be using it round trip. I'm a Capture One user. I like to use Photoshop, but boy, the plugins look pretty awesome on this. So I'm going to in Capture One, edit with Photoshop, send it on over. If you use Lightroom, it's a very similar round trip to take it into Photoshop. So here we go. I have this cool shot of this train going by in Houston. And I'm just going to do an edit, and you're going to see how some of these modules work. Let's go over to our Skylum software. And now, here we are. And we have this come up right here. Now, something I'm going to tell you right off the bat, you do have presets. And in these presets, you can scroll around. Some of them are available when you purchase it. Some of them are available as add-ons. Some of them are add-ons that are made by Skylum, Luminar, and then others are made by a user community. So here's an urban style. Everything pops up. And by the way, if you like something, you can put it in your favorites. You just hit that little heart icon. So Old Town, Edinburgh, Toronto, Melbourne, Abbey Street, New York. You could apply any of these. Of course, you can go in and try anything. You could do this film stuff right here. So they have a matte noir. They have a quirky Mo is what it's called. So there's some cool presets on here. If you are a preset photographer, you could check those out. I personally don't usually mess with presets. So let's go to edit. And something that I want to show you over here is that you've got these two tabs. You've got your tools, and then every time you add a tool, it ends up in this edit area, and you can use as many of the tools as you want. So if you want to like do a couple of different erases or develops or whatever, then you're good to go. Another thing I want to show you is that this is favorites. So in my short time using this program, these are some things that I really like. However, there's some other ones that maybe I want to add in that I find that I use a lot. Like, develop's kind of an important one. So let's put develop up there. Now develop goes up here. It's just a simple right click. I erase things a lot. So let's put the erase tool up here. So I've got this shot of this train. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what happens if you hit enhance. So this is the accent, and you just move it on over, and things get a little more contrasty. Things get a little bit more bright. Things get a little bit more colorful, right? So let's just start with that. There's all sorts of color stuff you can put in, film grains, etc. But let's just start with what they think is good. Enhance. That looks pretty good overall, I would say. There's good color pop and good contrast and all that. So yeah, let's roll with it. Let me show you first the power of erase. So let's go over here. And they have this cool new thing called remove power lines, and let's just see how well it does. So the AI is going to remove the power lines in theory. And And there you go. How good of a job did it do? Let's find out. If you go over to this little eye, you can check its work. I think it did a pretty good job. I see a couple places where I think it went a bit too far. And the great news is this is very easy to fix. So as you can see, like up here, when you let go, you can see like these lines, it left a little bit of the power line there, but it also, like you can see up here that it thought that that was a power line, right? Well, this is super easy to fix. So we can go to a small brush size. We can look and see, oh yeah, okay, it's up there. So we can just draw right here and restore it. And then boom, it's back. And then we see that it got a little too happy here and here. So we're just gonna draw in here, and here, and hit restore. And boom, it brings those back. And then just another spot where it got a little happy was on this. So we can draw along here and hit restore. Now it's gonna probably bring a little bit of the power line back, which we can get rid of. Yeah, that's easy. And then there was another spot here where we actually do want to erase. So here we're just gonna right there and hit erase. Boom. And here, same thing. Erase. Awesome. I mean, overall, I'd say it's 90% there. There's a little bit here I need to erase. So let's just right there, erase. And it did a pretty good job of blending. So that's removing the power lines, but let's check out some other things we can do with this. Let's check out what we can do with this magic light. Let's just turn up the intensity and see what happens. Oh, cool. So you can see right here that it creates a starburst around these street lights. Then you can mess with the size. You can mess with the glow, clearness. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Like a really well-defined starburst. Now it's a little fake, so we're going to pull that back out. The number of beams that it has, so it can add and take away beams, which is pretty awesome. And then you can rotate it. Cool, I'm going to leave that in there. It looks a little fake, but whatever. We're just doing this for fun. I probably wouldn't make it that intense. So let's just leave it about right there. That looks kind of cool. It just adds a little something to the photo. Now let me show you really quickly how to use the AI masks. So I'm going to, let's do a structure, okay? So I'm going to do the AI mask. Let's click on this and just go to AI mask. It has this really cool algorithmic looking thing that happens as you move your mouse around, and it's analyzing what's what. So it's going to analyze like architecture, transport, man-made structures or man-made streets. And that's what it's going to be looking for. One thing to keep in mind is once it defines what's what, you can actually use this on other parts of the module. So if you wanted to adjust the sky, or you wanted to do another develop module, you just want to develop part of it, a mask, you can do that. Okay, so let's see right here. So we've got man-made ground. Let's see how good of a job it did. So we're going to hit mask. Oh yeah, look, there's man-made ground. I think it might have a little bit of spill here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to mask, brush, and erase. And I don't, yeah, there's just a tiny bit right there that I don't necessarily want it to be part of the man-made ground, but there's the man-made ground. Okay, great. Let's go to adjustments and let's start increasing the structure. And wow, look at that. Look at how big of a difference that makes. So this is basically clarity in Lightroom and clarity in Capture One. Now let's go and see where you see edits. This is all the things that have happened in steps. So like if I go to enhance, it's gonna take away the structure of the magic light and erase. It does everything in a linear order. So when I go to enhance, watch this, boom, that clarity went away. And it's like, hey, here's what your enhance did. And you click and you go, oh, okay, cool. Now I'm gonna go to the erase because remember the power lines, they're in there. Now you go to erase and see the power lines are gone. But you notice that we don't have the magic light yet. So now we're gonna go to the magic light and boom, the magic light turns on. The power lines are gone. We have our enhance, but we still don't have our clarity, or our structure as they call it. And so now look, we have our structure. Great, I'm gonna take it one further. I want to see what happens if I make a third layer, maybe desaturate the buildings even more to make this transport stand out a little bit more. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a color module and we're gonna go ahead and go to our masking, AI mask, and it should pop up pretty quickly. All the AI that I already did, it should come up. All right, so now we're going to go to like transport, or actually, no, let's go to architecture, okay? And we're going to go to mask. And it kind of got the architecture right, but that's okay. We're going to go to brush, we're going to go to erase, and we'll just, and I can see why. And I actually want to keep this flower bed and this sign because I kind of consider them part of the transport part of this picture. I want them to be colorful. I think they work well with the scene. So I'm just going to erase that out. And now the scene is kind of split up into thirds now, so to speak. So I'm going to go in and I'm just going to go to our color, our adjustments. I'm just going to desaturate it. And there you go. It's kind of selective color. You have this background where it's monochrome. You have a very colorful transport. And then you also have some structure here with the clarity. And I actually want to bump the structure up on the transport as well, the train. Now we're going to go back and we're going to add a second structure. We're going to go to our masking. We're going to go to our AI mask. It's going to analyze everything. And look, this time it's like, oh, yeah, there's the transport. Let's see how accurate it was. It's pretty accurate. There's a tiny bit up here that I just need to erase. So let's go to mask, brush, erase, and just get rid of that. Now you can make these brushes finer. I'm doing a very quick and dirty edit, but like I could go into my hardness right here, or actually they just call it softness, and I can make these harder edges. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle here. Just, I went a little too hardcore there. Yeah, that's gonna, I mean, thankfully that's kind of silverish, so it's not a big deal. Just like that. Now, I want to go into this adjustment, and I just want to make the clarity go up big time. And look at how big of a difference that made. So you see that Starbucks logo right there? When I hold this down, it's gone. When I adjust that structure, you can see that. It's popping pretty well. I think that looks kind of cool. I'm also going to add a color to it. Maybe I want to pull the vibrance up, I don't actually, but maybe I do. You could have something like you can move the color cast. There we go. Maybe that is what I want to do. Something like that. And when I'm done with it, let's go ahead and hit apply. And so while this is processing, because it's doing a lot of modules, okay, it's done. I can send it back to Photoshop. And I zoom out. And there's my finished product. I just go over here. I click on it. I hit save. And now I go over to Capture One. And here is the original file. Here's the edited file. Can you do all this stuff in Photoshop? Sure, but the modules, in my opinion, on Luminar NEO tends to be a little faster. So if you're like a wedding photographer or something like that, one way you could do a really quick edit, maybe you had something come up and you have to turn an edit around pretty quickly. You could send this off to Photoshop. And keep in mind, you can use this as a standalone program. It's a raw editor if you use it as a standalone program. I just love my Capture One and my Photoshop. And so Luminar were cool enough to make it in a way that could accommodate me, which is that I can use it as a plugin. And so that is fantastic. That's exactly how I want to use Luminar NEO. So let's roll with it. So, okay, so I have this shot in Photoshop. I'm going to take it over to Luminar NEO. Just to show you real quick, when you go to enhance and you just pull this up, like, look at that. Look at how it pulled up, because he's wearing a green suit. And when you look at it like this, it's kind of harder to tell it's a green suit. But when you pull the accents up, look at that. Oh, wow, it's a green suit. And it pulls things up pretty well. I wouldn't have to really go into the develop module to make many adjustments to this. There's a smart contrast tool that I could use, maybe if I wanted a little more contrasty. But this is pretty awesome. If you're in a hurry to edit a wedding or you're editing an event or something like that, I find that the enhance on it, the built-in enhance, if you're just looking for a quick, hey, I want a little more contrast boost, I want a little more saturation color boost, the AI on it seems to know about how much of the shadows to pull out on shots like this. So kudos. I don't know what the AI is doing, but I mean, if I handed this shot to a client, they probably would say, hey, great shot. Let's do this edit of Florence, okay? So you see this shot of Florence that I took. It's pretty good on its own, but it's a little flat. There's these people here. I don't particularly like them. So we're going to go into Luminar NEO, and let's test out how well the erase tool works. So let's go to Edit and Erase. And let's just draw this in and see what it does. I haven't, really messed with anything. So this is just, hey, how good's the AI on it? So there's a head there. There's someone's camera there. There's their head. Great. And this is pretty snappy, by the way, as I'm drawing. So this is good. And let's just see what happens. Let's go over here and hit erase. It's processing. All right. Looks like trees to me. I think it did a pretty good job of erasing. Let's try a little bit more complex of erase, even though I think that going up against the trees is pretty complex. So here is downtown Florence. I don't want to see this, so let's just get rid of this guy right here. I think of Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci when I think about the Renaissance period, but I definitely don't think about cranes, so let's get rid of those. Erase. That looks pretty good. So, okay, when I look at this overall, I kind of think that the city looks a little dull, and maybe we could do some cooler stuff with the sky. If you wanted to change the sky, you could go into the sky module. I actually like this sky, so I don't think I would want to mess with it, but you could go in here and select the different skies, and let's see how well it blends in with the mountains. That actually looks pretty awesome right there with that sky. You could do a sky like this. And I'll just give you the quick and dirty on the sky, because if you're a landscape photographer, you might think that this is cooler than what I got, and the highlight detail is definitely better than what I got. So as this stuff loads in, there's an advanced section on the sky area, and you can change things like the orientation, the horizon position. So you can put the horizon wherever you want. You can change your vertical position. You can make that there. Your horizontal position. Another thing to keep in mind is there's this flip. Flip is important because the sun is setting on the right side or the sun is setting on the left side. You want to be able to move that around. I'm going to leave it as is. There's mask refinement. You can go in and you see how it's adjusting the glow on the mountains. So that's what the mask refinement tool does, the slider. This is where it closes the gaps. So you can sit there and kind of get that as much as you want. It'll fix the details a little bit. You can do a scene relight. So here's my scene. And as I adjust this, you see how my foreground is kind of getting lighter and darker. You can mess with the saturation on the relight. So as I put it here, it can get more or less saturated. Relight human, I don't have a human subject in here to relight. There's not a lot going on with the reflections, really. The water blur, and this isn't really that kind of shot. But here's kind of a cool thing, defocus. So I don't want to defocus the sky because this is stopped down at like F11 or something like that, or F8. But if you were taking a tight shot of somebody or something and you were maybe shooting at a shallower depth of field, this allows you to control your fall off to where it'll match and look realistic. Because if you have a shallow depth of field and you have a perfectly unfocused sky, that's going to look weird. You can also adjust the warmth. So I can make the sky warmer. I can make it cooler. I can adjust the brightness of the sky. And then I can adjust the atmospheric haze. So there's a lot of really cool things you can do with the sky. I'm actually just going to use my original sky. So if I hit this back button, boom, it takes me to my original sky. And the reason I want to use my original sky is I just want to see what I can do with it, because that's what I shot. For one, we can just go to enhance and see what that does. Looks a little too HDR for me. So I'm probably take this enhance down a little bit. And then the sky enhancer, we can make the sky just enhance. And I actually do like the sky enhancer here. I think that looks a little better. So we're going to roll with the sky enhancer. I think that the city and this foreground element kind of need a little bit of balance. So I'm going to go up to relight. And I'm going to make the brightness far actually a little brighter and the brightness near a little darker. I don't really want my bushes to stand out too much. I want my city to stand out. So brightness near and brightness far. And then if you want to nail the balance, here's what the depth does. So as you see, and you move the depth, you see how it's kind of push brimming across the scene. And then you can go into your advanced settings and you can dehalo things. You can change the warmth for the near. So maybe I want to make a little more golden hour in here. And maybe make it a little more golden hour here, or maybe I want to make it cooler. I don't really like the way it looks cool, but maybe because it's golden hour, I want things to look a little more golden. And that looks pretty cool. Another cool thing, we could do Sunray. Sunray is a really cool one for landscapes. So let's go to Sunrays. So you see where it says place sun center, click on that. And then you see that little cursor Move that right over there where the sun obviously is. And now watch this. I'm going to turn the amounts up. And look, there's like beams of light that come through. Now that's obviously really fake looking. We're going to pull that way back to about there. And you can go in and you can change the lengths. You can change how much it's penetrating, etc. So you can get it somewhere like that. You can change the radius of the sun. So that radius right there is a little bit closer to what we're seeing bust through the clouds. You can change the glow radius. You can change the glow amount. You can change the number of rays. So you see how there's a ton of rays. Now there's just a few rays. You can randomize it. And then you can also change the warmth of the rays. So now you see like there's a beam right here and it's kind of getting a little bit on the warm side. Now I think that these lengths need to come back quite a bit. That looks kind of cool. And so this is what it looks like without and with. I'm going to leave it on there. I think that looks kind of cool. So I may actually I may make it a little bit more present to just kind of make it bust out a little bit more. I'll go through and I'll mess with the structure on this whole picture just a little bit. Make it pop just a little. And then, I could go in and just maybe mess with the color a little bit, make it more vibrant. It's getting a little too HDR-ish, but let's just go through and see what it originally looked like and what it now looks like. So when I pulled it in, it looks like this. And then when I took it out, it ended up looking like this. And I can mess with it a little bit more, but you can see the power of Luminar and how quickly it can transform a landscape. Let's do one more landscape real quick. I took this shot 5 years ago. Let's pull it into Luminar. I'm going to do a real quick and dirty on it. The things that stand out to me, I don't like that building right there, and I want to change the sky and maybe the color of the foliage. Let's see how quickly we can edit this. We're going to go to erase. I'm just going to get rid of this building, and maybe this road. Make it a little less man-made and hit erase. Let's see what we get. That looks pretty good. It all kind of blends in. I love the way that looks. Let's go into the landscape module and let's go to a foliage enhancer. There's the foliage enhancer, and you can actually change the foliage hue if you want. So you can make the foliage look, that looks pretty darn fake. I kind of liked it where it was. I can make it a little more golden hour if I want to. I can pull some dehaze out if I want to. Now this is looking kind of on the fake side, but just to show you the extremes of how far you could push this. If you were one of those landscape photographers who wanted to just go super saturated and all that, you could. I'm going to mess with this sky. I'm actually going to go, because this is actually during the day, I'm going to go with drama instead. So let's go with dramatic sky. Let's go with something more like this, which would, yeah, that's a little bit more what I would normally see in the Rockies. That afternoon thunderstorm, this looks pretty awesome. I'm just going to go in and just make a tiny bit of an adjustment with the structure, like right about there. That's too much. Right about there. And that looks pretty awesome. Let's hit apply. That's just a quick and dirty edit, like just real quick. I want the AI to do a little bit of automation for me. I've been using Photoshop for 2 decades and I love Photoshop and I'm never going to get rid of it, but there are just a lot of modules. I go from this to that. I'm not a landscape photographer, by the way. I'm a portrait photographer. I shoot landscapes. This is my picture. If I posted this on Instagram, people would probably say, great shot, Kevin, even though I'm a portrait photographer. Speaking of portraits, all right, let's move into my bread and butter, which is portraiture. We're going to start with an environmental portrait. And so as you can see right here, the subject is backlit. The sun is behind her and she's a little dark on the front, a little bit too much shadow. Now you could pull the shadows, you could draw a mask, you could do a lot of those things, but you could also just use this module Relight and just turn up the brightness near. And so when I do that, I'm also going to pull the brightness far. Hindsight was 2020. I would have gone back and I would have balanced that out a little bit more, but it almost looks like I'm popping her with a flash here. But this is a powerful tool if you're an environmental portrait photographer, you forgot your flash and you find yourself in a backlit situation. Now, another thing you can do is light up the face, which there is this really cool module for face. You turn the face up and you can get a little bit more brightness out of the face. No need to draw a mask. It just figures out where the face is. So I'm going to send that one off, and let's move on to another quick edit. All right, so here is another edit I did in a studio, a much more controlled environment. I'm just doing your basic exposure, contrast, highlight, shadow adjustment in the develop module. So let's go ahead and start messing with the face. We're going to mess with the eyes a little bit. So let's zoom in right here. Let's mess with all these different sliders. So we've got the eye enhancer, and watch the way the eyes start popping a little bit more when you turn up the eye enhancer, especially when you turn up the iris flare. And also, yeah, so check out that before and after. The eyes pop a little bit more, which helps sell your picture a little bit. You can improve the eyebrows, although I don't think they're needed in this case. I think that's a little extreme, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that back down. I think they look a little bit more natural without that in there. You can remove dark circles, which she doesn't have many, but you could get that done pretty quickly. It'll just kind of do a little dodge around there. And then you can also enlarge the eyes if you wanted to. It looks a little wacky. But let's go ahead and turn that back down. Another cool thing that you can do with the eyes is you can change the color. To do that, you just go to that iris area and you can make the eyes brown. You can make the eyes, green. You can make the eyes gray. And this comes in handy if you're a commercial photographer. Maybe you want the eyes to be a certain color to complement your product or whatever. But we're going to go back to the regular eyes. We're going to go to skin. Now, I will say that the skin... The shine removal I like. I think the shine removal is great. I think the where you adjust the amount slider, it makes things look still a little too filtered. I don't like filters. I'm a dodge and burn guy. I like to do micro dodge and burning. But I will say that the skin, when you adjust the amount of softening, it's good from a distance. So if you're shooting somebody from like 10, 15 feet away, it's kind of more 3/4 body, full body shot. It's a really quick and dirty way to get their skin adjusted. The skin defects removal, I found that to be hit or miss, especially if they have freckles. It would just do kind of a weird clone stamp on it. So I'm mainly going to use the shine removal, and then I'll use the amount slider on shots that are like, environmental portraits from like, 3/4 body, full body. I'm standing 15, 20 feet away. But when you look at this is a very contrasty shot. It pops. The eyes pop because we went ahead and enhanced those. And here's the before and after. Now we're going to look at the body tool, and we're going to use it on a model that absolutely does not need it. She's super fit, but I'm just going to go ahead and show you. You can make the body more narrow. You can tuck the abdomen in more. Yeah, you can use that. I don't recommend using it unrealistically, but keep in mind your lenses do distort things, so sometimes you do need to change the shape a little bit to see what your eyes actually saw. Sometimes lenses over-exaggerate things, so don't abuse this tool, kids, but it definitely can come in handy in certain situations. So here's the atmosphere. You can add mist. You can add haze. There's a lot of really cool things. Fog. You can make it go away. You can add it in. Just really cool for adding some atmospheric stuff to your shots. If you're an environmental portrait photographer, you do dreamy stuff, more fantasy type stuff. I definitely see the atmosphere coming in handy, and I'm sure it also comes in handy for you landscape photographers as well. Now here's the glow tool, which if you want to make your stuff look a little more painterly, they've got a soft focus. They've got the glow effect, the Orton effect, and then the Orton effect soft. I definitely see this module getting heavy usage from newborn photographers and then people who do more like fantasy type stuff, like people with elf ears, stuff I definitely don't shoot. But cool module, powerful nonetheless. So the last module I want to talk to you about is Portrait Bokeh. I shot this shot at f8. I intended to shoot it at f8, but some of you watching this may be more into a shallow depth of field, and maybe you need a shallow depth of field. Maybe there's something in the background you want to isolate your subject from. So you can move the slider all the way to the right. I took this shot at 70 millimeters on medium format, which is a normal field of view, roughly 55 millimeters in full frame. You're going to need something like a 1.2 lens to get something like this. You can see right here that the fall off is a little bit unrealistic compared to that. Additionally, it missed a spot. And so you have focus, defocus, and restore. We're just going to focus some of this sheer veil in there. And then if you go to this background area, this is where you can really start messing with your depth correction and your edges. And so you'll start seeing this background getting a little blurrier right here on the rocks, which is what I want, because we're trying to get a shallower depth of field. And that's kind of more closely emulating, shooting at f1.2 or a very shallow depth of field. You can also adjust things like warmth, your highlight glow. And these sliders are meant to kind of emulate what goes on with optics and a lens. I think it does a pretty good job if you have a kit lens and you just can't afford something that's f1.2 or f1.4. This is a decent replacement. There's no replacement for amazing optics, but this gets pretty darn close. I find this to be a very intuitive and easy to use background blur tool to emulate optics. I do think it's going to be an effective tool for a lot of you. However, I like this shot at f8, so we're going to keep it at f8 and keep this all in focus. Now, I know at the beginning of the video, I said, I don't really use presets. However, because they put the AI modules within the presets, that is a different story. I'm going to show you how to improve your workflow by putting these AI modules together to create your own presets. So check this out. I'm going to just move some sliders around. I'm going to do a little bit of shine removal. I'm going to go over to my develop and pull the highlights back just a little bit. And then we're going to go over to the face module. I'm going to over exaggerate all of my edits just so you can see how this translates across as a preset. So I'm going to pull up the eye enhancer, the iris flare, etc. Now I'm going to oversaturate the lip as well as over whiten the teeth just so you can see the drastic change as this translates on a preset. But let's just say we did like this. Okay, we're going to go down to Actions and save as preset. And then I'm going to name it Gabby Session. And because I took a lot of shots that were pretty much the same lighting, I can take this preset and apply it across all my shots. Now, the reason this is different than Lightroom and other programs is usually you have to have masks and so on and so forth. This detects the lips and makes them more saturated. Capture One, Lightroom, those presets, they're not using AI in them. So like this thing says, oh, that's a lip, that's an eye. I'm going to apply this to the eye, to the lip, to the teeth every single time. And that's what makes this so powerful. So now that I've had the time to use Luminar NEO for a period of about a month, what are my thoughts on this program? Well, I'm pretty set in my ways. I love using Capture One and I love using Photoshop. And so if this program had not had a plugin workflow, I probably would have dismissed it and I wouldn't have tested it out altogether. And I think there's a lot of you out there who are a lot like me. You're not necessarily looking at the AI power of Luminar NEO to be your organizer or your catalog. You're actually looking at it to be used as a plugin and something that you can use in addition to Photoshop or Lightroom or Capture One, or a combination of 2 or 3 of those programs together, which is how I decided to use it. I found the workflow to be really easy to use. Going from Capture One, sending it to Photoshop, using it as a plugin, doing my edits with the modules. I found it to be faster to do in Neo for almost all modules than in Photoshop. I find in Photoshop, I usually have to go up to a menu and then scroll over to something, or I have to go to a tool and then I have to go to the tool presets. Things are kind of more scattered or hidden in menus. I find that the GUI, the graphical user interface, and where all the slider locations are and all that inside Luminar NEO seem to be easier for me to find, and therefore they help me become productive faster and they help me get a lot more accomplished. So I think if you're watching and you've made it this far into the video, you're probably thinking, oh yeah, that's how I'm probably going to use it as well. I will say that even though I didn't really dive too much into using it as a standalone program, it did do an admirable job of catalog organization, and it is cool that you can use it as a raw editor, because when I'm using it as a plugin in Photoshop, I'm not using it as a raw editor. I'm either editing a PSD file or a TIFF file, and then I'm sending it back on over to Capture One as an edited TIFF file, which is what I typically do anyway when I'm sending things off to Photoshop, because Photoshop isn't a raw editor. As an environmental portrait photographer, I thought Relight was a godsend. I don't have to draw masks anymore. I don't have to like raise my exposure or any of the other tricks. And frankly, it draws masks better than I draw masks. The mask AI on there is incredible. Even when it misses a little bit, you can just kind of erase where it missed, and it's still much faster and much more accurate than I am. And so it saves me a lot of time in post. I'm a photographer who likes to get things as right at the camera as possible, to give myself as little time in post as possible, because I find that every minute I'm sitting at a computer is a minute that I'm not out shooting and getting better at my camera. And so for me, Luminar, the modules, I thought the sky replacement was cool, even though I don't shoot landscapes. Sometimes I want to go on vacation and I take a really beautiful sunset shot, but maybe the sun's not quite doing what I want it to do. And maybe I want to turn that into some sort of a print or whatever. It'll do that, and it'll do that really well. I thought that the Powerline removal on it was pretty darn accurate, and I think that it will save me a lot of time. I shoot a lot of street photography, and sometimes I see things I don't want. Let's talk about the things that I think that they need to improve upon. As a portrait photographer who still uses micro dodge burn, macro dodge burn, clone stamping, and all that, I do not use frequency separation. I still think that the skin softening looks a little too filter-y, and I think everybody's programs look that way, so this isn't technically a knock on Luminar because skin is not algorithmic, and we're using algorithms to try to make skin look better. And so it's just that uncanny valley, the less human something that is a humanoid looks, the more uncomfortable it makes us. I just don't think any company's there, and I've seen some other companies out there that are claiming to be awesome at doing the skin retouching. I don't think anybody's there yet, including Luminar. I do think that if you're taking a picture of somebody from maybe 10 feet or longer away, a 3/4 body shot or a full body shot, and you're standing, you're doing more of an environmental portrait for a quick and dirty edit, yes, you can move that slider. I found that the skin defects check right now is kind of not working to my liking, so I don't use it at all. Love the shine removal. But I think that that's the main place where it could be better. Their presets are okay. I don't use presets, and so maybe you'll look at them and think that they're amazing. That's something that I think could be improved upon, is that they could have more presets. There's really not that many. There's like half a dozen per genre, and then you have to buy the rest. But it does look like they offer really good support, and so I got to give them kudos for that. Sometimes I would find that the masks would be a little too eager, and they'd have a hard time identifying the difference between like a train and a building. I found that the Powerline AI in general was good, but one place where it's going to need to be improved upon is when you have power lines up against buildings. It can't tell the difference between the framing of the skyscraper windows and the power lines themselves, and oftentimes it guesses wrong, which I have to go back and still like, erase it out or whatever. One thing I'd like to see Luminar NEO have in future updates is I shoot in the studio. Oftentimes I find myself shooting against solid colored backdrops, maybe a plain white or a gray. I would like to see some sort of a module that could use an AI mask to go, oh, I can see that you only had an 8-foot backdrop, but you're about 12 feet off, and they could go in and use some sort of a content aware fill that's better than Photoshop's, because I still find that oftentimes I'm still having to do a lot of crazy tricks inside Photoshop to try to get my backdrops to look good. So anything that they could do to clean up backdrops, anything they could do to remove foot marks or anything like that, I don't see any modules that address that. But if they did that, oh my gosh, this would be absolutely giving a lot of these other programs a run for their money. And in terms of AI, I think it still does. And considering the price, I absolutely recommend that you purchase this. I have plugins that I've purchased just for like doing skin retouching that cost twice as much as this program, the perpetual license. So yes, I will be using this program a ton moving forward, and it receives 2 thumbs up. That does it for today's episode. I thank each and every one of you for watching. I know this was a really long episode, so if you stuck it out to the end, thank you very much. I hope you found this to be useful. I hope you found it to be educational. I don't do a ton of in-depth reviews of software, and so I wanted to use my own work today. I wanted to show you actual shots I've taken, not shots that some company has given me that are like, oh yeah, this is going to look great when they put them in landscape mode. Or, I took real shots with real power lines that I had problems with that I needed to remove. If you do want to buy Luminar NEO, there is a link in the description below. Yes, it's an affiliate link. Yes, I do get a kickback. I get a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of money for putting in the effort into today's video. You can get 10% off typing in Kevin10 or clicking the link below. I thank each and every one of you for watching today. If you love this channel, if you like this channel, if you find it to be useful, helpful, etc., I humbly ask you, click the subscribe button below. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.